News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Welcome to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning.
I'm Allan Gilbreth, darkhookmedia.com.
And I'm Maximilian, and I suppose it's only appropriate that I'm a day behind to wish you all a very happy National Backflow Prevention Day.
I had a little backflow yesterday, Allan, but it was, I don't think it had to do with...
You know, I'm probably the only one in the room that actually appreciates that day.
And there's
I think you better explain what backflow is, somebody here, because...
I will be happy to.
Shortly, quickly.
Backflow is literally exactly what it says. It's keeping water from going the wrong direction.
So
once it moves into a commercial facility, it stays in the commercial facility and doesn't go backwards.
Okay.
And the history of the day itself actually has a little bit of a fun, interesting story behind it, if you don't mind me telling.
Go for it.
It was created in March of 2021 by the Watts Water Technologies to, as they say, celebrate the unsung heroes who ensure the prevention of backflow through backflow prevention technologies.
Well, I'll tell you this. It's easy to make fun of this until you have a backflow situation, and then you're going to be calling on these guys. But
And
my gosh.
it also marked an important day back in 1933 because that day is a day that lived on in infamy. Do you want me to do it now or later?
Let's do it in a minute. Hold on,
Okay.
Matt. What happened to setting the table on the show? It's getting out of control here, these
The
introductions.
table is preset.
Okay, but speaking of a man who probably cares deeply about backflow and keeping the water where it's supposed to be, we got our good buddy Jay Hill in the house.
Hey. Good morning.
Hey, Jay. Good to have you here a little early today, man. So
Thank you.
this is a perfect day to get in touch with us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline. You can call or text us at 901-683-0989. Don't forget, you can send pictures. But if you've got any questions about the exterior protection of your home, or, we don't lean on this enough, Jay, the interior remodeling projects that you do.
Oh,
So
we'll talk about that today.
that's exactly, because Jay, from top to bottom, it's all about keeping your home up to date, protected, and stylish too. Let's face it,
Yeah.
So, all right. So Jay Hill's in the house, but Allan, we've got we got a very mixed bag here in our lineup today. Well, let's just start in our great moments in building history. We're going to talk about probably I don't even think you have to explain what this is. Central Park. Does anybody not know what Central Park is in New York?
What?
I mean, one of the most iconic, landmarks of all time. And somebody may say, well, what kind of construction goes on there? No, the entire thing's man-made.
I was surprised about how many things were actually inside of this.
Yeah, me too. I learned a lot on this one. So, on the flip side of that, in our historically terrible segment, we have something that all of us, I think, grew up with except Max. Max, you were lucky that lunchroom technology was a little more advanced by the time you got to school.
I heard of it in passing, but I never got to experience it. Like the shag carpeting.
Yeah, if you grew up in the 60s or 70s as a kid, you knew what this thing was, and we're going to...
It's not so much that it advanced as it became so much less lethal.
Yeah, we've said that. How did we ever actually survive?
I'm not sure how some of us are still breathing.
Right.
I'm really, really surprised.
And I can't over tease because, we got a lot probably we're going to talk about with Jay here today. But I did have a little listener participation. I was sitting there looking at my tool setup, in my truck. Because, what do we call this, Allan? What do you call it when you take one piece of one tool and you take something else and you stick it together to make it keep working or something?
Frankenstein?
Frankensteining your
It's
tools.
called a homunculus.
Okay, a
You
homunculus.
are putting it together. It is the Frankenstein of tools.
Well,
I
I
like
have
the word
about
homunculus.
30 of those.
Old Blue was a perfect example. It
Yeah.
had a different cord. It had
Oh,
a
yeah.
different chuck. It had, so if you've got anything out there, I'm putting this out to the listeners. If you've got any really interesting tools that you didn't want to let go of, so you went to any length to save them, and maybe it looks weird, but it still works. We'd love pictures too. I have to believe that old Deuce out there has about a whole garage full of these types of tools. But
I
anyway,
got a truck full.
yeah, I've had some. And Jay, I don't know if you've got any
Well,
goofy
yes, I
tools
just
like
call
that.
them differently. I call that new tool affectionately the Unique 250.
Okay.
There you go.
And we've got a lot more than that. We got our must-have item. The must-have item of the week looks pretty lethal. We've posted pictures of all this on our Tool Talk Radio Facebook page, so give it a check it out over there on Facebook. But Max, I know you're dying to tell us more about National Backflow Prevention Day, so go ahead, man.
Well, I wanted to just mention a little bit of history behind it. The Water Technology Company chose the day to mark something that happened nearly a century ago in 1933 at the Chicago World's Fair. Not only, I guess that was the second time or third time or whatever that they had a World's Fair there. Well, it brought thousands of people into the city, but unfortunately, a lot of them decided to stay in two popular hotels that shared a rooftop water source. And unfortunately, this cross-connection led to dysentery contamination in the water supply for the hotels, which affected 2,000 individuals, made them fall ill, and 98 people passed away. And so the unsung heroes are here to stay with the National Backflow Prevention Day. And thank goodness back in 1974, they actually passed the Safe Water Drinking Act.
It was only 1974. We went that long without it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy
So
smokes.
it's kind of ironic that we make a law in the 70s when everything in the 70s was trying to kill you.
Yeah, the engineering wasn't the best back in
Well, that's why we started making laws.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is just one of those devices you don't really think about. You don't have to really consider. But the safety of the water supply, and this is stuff you see in the news now all the time. And for homeowners, and especially for people on larger properties,
Right.
Different municipalities are starting to put in backflow preventers even there. So
You're talking about we have water coming in, like our drinking water,
Exactly.
and then there's something to keep it from being pushed back.
what happens is water flows into an area. And what people don't really realize, now, have you ever shut off the water to your house and then had to drain the line? So you got to change out a faucet or something? Have you ever been amazed at how much water is actually in your house?
Oh, right. It just keeps running sometimes.
I mean, it's several minutes of water running at a fairly decent volume. So that is a large amount of water that has now left the safety of the municipality's pipes.
Yeah.
And is now, I don't know what you did to it.
Yeah.
You raising chickens, hamsters, you got water just spraying out over the pigs, or so we don't know what happened to the water once it left the system. So the trick is, let's keep that water from ever coming back into the system and sharing whatever you did with it with somebody else.
So, did they invent new valves or something?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
There are a wide variety, and I'll look at Jay here and go, there are a wide variety of backflows, aren't there?
There absolutely are. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what, because, when Max was mentioning, he said there's a rooftop water supply.
Yeah.
I'm picturing it's just a water tank, right?
It was.
Yeah. And that water is just flowing straight down the pipe.
Yeah.
I mean, no wonder folks got so sick.
Yeah, because, sometimes when you're working on plumbing, you see how the water rocks back and forth sometimes when you're doing so. Yeah, a little dirty water rocks back, and now it's in the system. It's pretty bad, actually. It's not very happy breakfast, everybody.
Yeah,
but,
this is, so I'm going to actually look at Max and go, great holiday, because this has so much to do with, the quality of life that we live today, because we do have the Clean Water Act. We do have these things that actually dramatically protect us to where we didn't even hear about we don't hear about the horrible news we used to hear about in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, because these kind of minor changes were such a dramatic shift. That's like a lot of municipalities that started separating rainwater from sewage.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, originally, when they began laying out city sewer systems, they just kind of basically, all the water that was considered waste all went through one system. Mm-hmm. And that meant anything that went down those pipes became contaminated with anything that got washed in from above or you flushed down the toilet.
Okay, because here you just triggered me, Allan, because you've seen this sometimes, I'm sure. The streets flood. We have a big rainstorm, and then the rain stops, and all the kids are playing. And I did this as a kid too. I'm sorry to say, but all the kids are playing because wow, we have this huge new puddle that's really fun to run around in. Well, isn't there sewage in that?
All right, well,
So don't be so quick to let your kids tool around in that.
well, now if this was the 40s, 50s, or even some places in the early 60s, you probably didn't really want to play in that water.
No.
However, now, because most municipalities separate wastewaters, of that puddle is probably full of whatever went down the outside sewers, not whatever went down the inside sewers.
So you hope.
Well, and then, that is, you're hoping you don't have a broke pipe under there or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I tell you, you're still going to have chemicals from lawns.
Yes.
That's going to flow out into the street, into
I
that
didn't even
stuff.
think of that.
I mean, I
Or
never thought
somebody
about drinking
changed
that
out
water
their
you're
oil
talking about.
or-
But
Yeah,
we did a whole-
fertilizer.
yeah, it's going to wash off for sure.
Yeah, because I saw this one video. This kid was riding his bike through this big puddle and laughing, and his dad's filming the whole thing. And I was thinking, that kid's
Yeah,
going
he
to be
Right
might,
before he
might not
died.
want to be doing
Gosh,
that. Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well, everybody, hey, we've got some interesting conversations coming up with our good buddy Jay Hill. You're listening to Tool Talk Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Would you please come help me tamp this down? It's a job that requires 2 men.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Although there's 3 men and a boy today.
Yeah, it requires. Okay, anyway. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. How many men does this show require?
At least 4.
Yeah. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And in the house, our good buddy Jay Hill with Big M Roofing and Remodeling. Note the word remodeling, because I think we're going to talk about that today. Perfect day to get in touch with us. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling hotline, 901-683-0989. Remember, you can also send pictures. And my call to action, I hope we get some response. We'll probably chime in later with some of our offerings, but my call to action today is I want to know what sort of tools you've Frankensteined. What have you? What is? Do you got a tool that you had to rig more or less to keep life in it? Did you have to combine it with another thing? Did you? You should have seen my fan before it fell off a ladder and finally died, Allan. It was a mess, but it worked. So
That's
anyway.
all that mattered.
Okay, hey Jay, it's good having you in the house, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here this morning, guys.
So it's interesting. I was talking to Jay the other day about your life, man. No offense, Jay, but I'm glad I don't do what you do. The weather, we get a weather, you could have smooth sailing. Things are moving along pretty good. We get a weather event and your whole life changes, right?
Yeah,
And
and
then you're not sleeping for 2 weeks because you're swamped, but,
Yeah, exactly.
But then other thing, but we're just, you do have a wide variety, and I don't know that we showcase enough of your remodeling work as well. So
Yeah, I
this is
appreciate
probably
you.
a nice time to be indoors, right?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And at the end of the day, when we talked last night, Joe, we were talking about the fact that we just not had the kind of weather that, typically would generate an insurance claim. Just hadn't had a bunch of high winds. We hadn't had any substantial rain, no hail. It's just been pretty flat and dry pretty much since March. We've only had one storm that was just a quasi-borderline storm even then. But so having said that, roofing obviously cools down a little bit because so much of our business is leveraged in roofing toward the storm, and not having that is certainly makes it a challenge. But, we decided a long time ago that we weren't going to do just roofs anyway. And as I've mentioned many times on the show, we decided we were going to do most things that were, included in an insurance claim. That way it could be one-stop shopping for the customer. So, yeah, I'd like to just let everybody know that, we do more than roofs. And although in our name it is Big M Roofing and Remodeling, I don't want anybody to be confused in the fact that, we do not do total kitchen remodels and we do not do total bathroom remodels, but literally everything else we do. We clean gutters. We install new gutters. We install gutter guards. We do gutter repair. We do siding. We do siding repair. Do a ton of wood replacement, painting. Now, we do a lot of painting and drywall inside as well, okay? So that is a trade that we do inside. We build fences, decks, do windows and doors, obviously roof repair, and metal work. So those are just a few things that we do, which are plenty, and do a good amount of tree work as well. You need trees trimmed this time of year, which a lot of people do. And again, cleaning out the gutters, we're doing a lot of that right now.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to cue on real fast, because October going into November, it's a little late. If we're going to do gutters, let's get out there and get gutters done now. And I think that is an unsung problem.
Yeah.
That we really get hammered with in the Mid-South. Because you drive down any street, anywhere you want, in any part of town, and I promise you will see greenery growing out of somebody's gutter.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a nightmare problem waiting to happen.
Absolutely.
So, Jay,
Allan,
what can happen when those gutters do not drain?
Yeah, and I tell you what's funny, and I want to answer that question, but let me seg into that by saying this. You'd be surprised at how many homes that I walk up to and somebody clearly needs gutters but don't have them at all. No gutters, nowhere. And I say, you ever thought about having gutters? Yeah, we've never had gutters. I'm like, that don't mean you don't need them. I mean, and here's the golden rule, about gutters, man. You've got to get rainwater, any water, as much as you can away from your foundation. You just need to do that. And the higher pitch home you have, the bigger the need that you have for gutters. But gutters are affordable. That's I tell people that all the time. It's not like replacing all your windows or, building some high dollar deck or something like that. Typically gutters run anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500, on a normal house. I mean, they're just affordable. And as opposed to the old galvanized gutters that a lot of people have, let's talk about this. You've got galvanized gutters right now. You're looking outside. You notice every time it rains, the water seems to be going in there, but it's leaking every 10 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Or at an elbow or at a turn.
Yeah,
that's so galvanized it's going to rust. So now we've got Cenex aluminum gutters that we literally fabricate right there on site and can fabricate runs with no seams at all up to 250 feet.
Yeah,
So,
I've seen those. Those are cool, man.
They're unbelievable.
They just run right out of the back of the truck, right?
And of course, aluminum's not going to rust. That's the
Right.
good news, and they're affordable. So yeah, we love to do gutter work, and you need them because if you got water coming back toward the home, it's going to be a problem eventually. That's going to be extremely expensive. Yeah.
Well, you triggered me, Jay, because one of the things when you see, and I know there's probably a lot of guys named Chuck that that work out of their truck, and they're probably good guys, but you don't want Chuck in his truck typically going to, the big box store, buying a bunch of gutters and putting them on your house if he's really not sure what to do, because there's a science to correct installation, right? I mean,
how about Dan in the van?
Yeah, Dan. I don't know. I think Chuck's getting a bad name, but you know what I'm saying.
Have you ever seen these gutters that you buy at Home Depot and Lowe's that you put up at your house?
Well,
they're plastic, and they're so ugly. And I've never seen anybody put gutters up themselves that went and bought them like that.
Well,
I'm like, it's not a showcase home. You're not going to win anything like that.
But you could buy them. Somebody could do that, and they could say, "Hey, I'm going to put gutters up." And so, but you really do want to. I like your system where literally there's no seams except at the elbows and everything. So.
That's it, man. That's it. And again, big feature there is it's not going to rust. They're going to last for you a long time.
But they got to be pitched. They got to be mounted correctly. That's,
Oh, my gosh.
So important.
The right screws, everything.
Well, yeah, and this has been kind of a weird thing I've run into in a lot of buildings, is I am sure that work person was absolutely thrilled with themselves and sat there looking at a perfect center bubble on any number of projects that desperately are supposed to be at a slight angle.
Right.
And that is window air conditioning installs, PTAC installs, anything involving water leaving the building.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, it all rolls downhill.
Yes.
And Jay, it shocks me sometimes when I'm working on these buildings, and I'll drop that little magnetic level up there, and that baby will be just perfect flat bubble, and I'm like, well, we know what your problem is. You built a little pond.
Yeah.
Because now you get a couple of leaves over the opening down here because you didn't put a screen on it, and now you built a bird bath.
Yeah, and I tell you what, Allan, on top of that, I think a lot of people do think that, I put gutters up 25 years ago, I'm good. I put gutters up. They're not permanent in that regard. They're not the brick on your home. I mean, they need to be cleaned out. They need to be maintained to a certain extent, some more than others. The more as the galvanized we talk about, the less is the aluminum we're talking about as well. But it's not that way. So you got to get them cleaned out. If you got any type of trees on the property where you can catch leaves and debris, especially pine needles, things like that,
yes.
you got to get them cleaned out. That's where the gutter guard comes in. Those, again, extremely affordable. We install a ton of them. A lot of times people think that they might need new gutters. We come take a look at the gutters are actually okay. We just need to clean them out and install some gutter guards. And that'll give them sometimes another 5-10 years out of those gutters. So we do all that.
Yeah, what kind of gutter guards do you like? Because there's different options, right?
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. We like the 4-foot snap ins that can actually be screwed in if you need them to. We've got a very, very, very fine mesh. Also, if you've got a lot of the pine trees and stuff that would go through a smaller grate, that might be a few centimeters by a few centimeters, a pine needle could still get through there. And then we've also got, a gutter helmet, which is a knockoff of the one that you hear about on TV for half the price, that you never have to clean them out at all, ever, 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 ever again. So there's a bunch of varieties of gutter guard.
So how do people get in touch with Big M Roofing and Remodeling?
We're at 901-484-5645. That's 901-484-5645. Love to take your call even today, even this morning when we get through with the show at 10. We'll be glad to talk to you anytime over the weekend. Of course, you can always go to our website, which is bigmroofingandremodeling.com.
Okay, cool. And also, you got a lot of images on the. I haven't checked to see if my roof's up there, but you got a pretty active website.
We do, and one of the things that we try to do is keep it updated, at least every couple of weeks or so by posting new photographs of new projects, keeping our credentials updated so you can see those right there online. So if you've not heard of Big M Roofing and Remodeling before, and this morning is the first time, go to our website and you can find out anything that you want to about us. We're especially proud of the 55 five-star reviews we have from the Better Business Bureau.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. One of the top-rated roofers in town. So, all right, well, we're going to continue visiting with our good buddy Jay Hill here on Tool Talk Radio.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
I thought I told you. I do the cutting around here.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
This is a pretty small snip for such a dramatic build-up, Max.
I technically do the cutting around here because I can.
Yeah, okay, thanks, man. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com, our pal Max over there behind the glass, and the very animated Jay Hill with Big M Roofing and Remodeling. Jay, it's funny when, off the air, we need to just keep the mics going. We get a lot of good material off the air. But anyway, it's a good day to talk to Jay or call us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling hotline at 901-683-0989. Especially if you have any questions or comments about the exterior protection of your home, or if you've got an interesting remodeling project in mind, Jay's the man to call. But hey, off the air, you guys were talking about Jay, you were showing pictures to Allan of some. What was that?
Well, yeah, this is actually a referral. Had a lady give me a call, said, "Hey, I'm Mr. Hill. Said I'm having some really big problems, and I'm just not sure what to do. Could you come take a look?" And this just happens to be in Mississippi. We'll leave it at that. And we went down and took a look at it, and it was I've never seen anything like this in my life. It was a Jim Walter home, and unfortunately, I'm just prefab homes. What I'm trying to say.
Oh, okay.
And it literally the walls were being separated from the flooring.
Okay, now why would that happen?
3 or 4 inches. We're in the middle of figuring that out.
Oh gosh.
Because we've not seen anything like it. It could be some settling on the plot over 20 years.
That's a lot of settling.
However, the material was most of the trim material was OSB. So
what is that?
It could be termites. It could be a lot of things. And we're just in the middle of it right now, trying to figure out what we need to do to get her back on her feet. But it's. I mean, this is a 6-figure claim. It's horrible.
It OSB is the press board, basically, right?
Yeah,
which is glue.
Yeah.
It's sawdust and glue instead of actual wood.
Correct.
It's wood chips. There's a
Whatever.
variety of OSBs, but
It's not meant for certain applications. So
it's used it gets used in a lot of places where it's really not designed to take that kind of stress.
yeah.
But one of the things I'm going to suggest to Jay is go around the exterior of this home with a really long level. Because I've seen this a few times, even in commercial buildings. I was working on one earlier this summer, as a matter of fact, and I'm in there with the gargantuan carpet level, laying it in the hallway because we were trying to figure out if it was an optical illusion or was the backside of the building actually lower than the front.
You can sometimes feel it. Even if
And
it's,
we finally ended up getting in there, and it was one of these things where if you looked at it, if you were the average person looking at the level, you would have said, yeah, it's level, because the bubble was pretty much close to the center. But keep in mind, this is a commercial building, so I got about 100-foot run. And being just slightly off bubble every 8 feet meant that there was actually now about a 2 to 4% grade from the front of the building to the back of the building.
Yeah.
And penultimately, what they ended up figuring out was that when that land was cleared, there was a dip or a low spot. And what they did was they just kind of ground up all the organic materials, shoved them in the hole, put dirt over it, and packed it down and made it look all nice and pretty and smooth.
Over time.
The problem is 30 years later, the little bacteria and all the lovely things that make our planet go round are underground consuming those materials. And it is now beginning to create an unleveling of the ground. But it's like 20, 30 years later before these things begin to happen. And especially if you've got prefabricated walls that are, were kind of built as a single unit and then put in place.
Yeah, they
would slide separately pretty easily.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, there's no doubt about this one in terms of, is it an illusion or is it real?
No, those were pretty shocking.
Now, I'm trying to tell you
4
guys,
inches,
listen, it breaks off in some places almost 6 inches from about 10 feet away from there, just like that. I mean, you feel like, first time I walked on it, it reminded me of being in a fun house.
Oh gosh. So the foundation's got issues. Is that what's? I mean,
Well, it may also be the attic.
Okay.
Because I've also seen the flip side of that problem of when you build a modern facility now and this was one of these things that struck me the first time I had a building inspector looked at me and goes, well, where's your hurricane strapping? Now, the guy I was talking to was also from a hurricane zone like I am, and we're sitting in Memphis, Tennessee. And the very first thought through my head was, I'm in Memphis. I don't need hurricane strapping. Yeah. And, of course, I think this was like 1 week after we had just had a tornado in the area.
Yeah, tornadoes just as
I'm
windy.
just kind of going, okay. And I'm like, all right, well, what is the new standard? Well, the new standard is every other joist needs to be connected. Now, well, this house may be just before that standard, and you don't have, and I got to say, all right, to the average person installing these little silly pieces of aluminum, they look ridiculous. You're like, there's no way that's going to hold my house together.
Well,
But if anybody has ever had like a board stuck on a nail while you're trying to get it removed,
yeah.
and I'm looking at Joe because I know you've
Oh,
been
yeah,
through this.
you're just
It
one
is
little-
shockingly how hard it is to get something apart when you're trying to make it come apart. And these little straps, little hurricane straps, make such a massive difference to the actual construction of a building, of a home at any point, because they provide that little extra point of contact where if the attic wasn't really well secured, now with wind and rain and time and heat, stuff has begun to shift and move. So you can wind up with a variety of weird problems at every level of the home.
Well, Jay, something you said caught my attention. You said this could be a 6-figure claim.
Yeah, I mean, because when you think about, definitely if you got problems, definitely with your floor joist. So, I mean, where you start, you're going to have to move out all the furniture of the house. Got to pack it up first and foremost. Then you're going to have to get up under the house, and replace or splice all these floor joists that are in there. And all those walls on that side, I mean, are going to have to be rebuilt. I mean, because literally, again, they're separated this far from the floor joist.
3 to 4 inches.
Yeah, in other
Gee.
words, this is the floor, this is
Yeah.
the wall. It's unbelievable. All of that trim, I don't know what it will do to the attic, but I'm sure it'll shift a little bit as well. There's just a lot. It could actually end up being a whole total.
That's
you know?
what I'm wondering. At what point does it make sense to just tear it down and
When
start
it
over?
exceeds the value of the insurance coverage.
Right. Well, here's one of the things, and we talk about this every week, Jay. You know, one of the advantages of calling Jay Hill is that you're a former insurance agent, and this is not an easy process to navigate, and that's why Jay should be the first guy you call. We got our roof replaced. Alan and I both had that, and it's an important thing to have an advocate. In this situation, you really are their advocate, right?
Right,
I mean,
right. You know what makes this particular deal so challenging is that, remember, we talk about all the time that, you know, what drives an insurance claim, that verbiage, that terminology is that it has to be sudden and it has to be accidental, okay? Sudden and accidental. Negligence, deterioration, those are things that typically aren't going to be covered, okay? That's just the way insurance works.
Yeah.
So trying to make this particular claim appear as, you know, that it was sudden and accidental, because we did have roof damage and the water came down the walls and that got the OSB root and that, you know, yeah.
Well, it muddies
Trying
the
to
water.
make- I'm
some
try-
of it could
I'm
be
trying to
sudden and
get
some
all-
of it isn't. You
Yeah,
know? So
exactly.
it's like you
Trying to
gotta
get all
sort
the
through
coverage
that.
we can possibly afford, this sweet lady. And we'll know more in the next couple of weeks as things start to come unraveled. But it's I've not had one like this in my lifetime where the floor literally was coming separated from the house. Yeah, it's not the whole house. It's only about 30%, but it's enough. The piano looks like this. I mean, it's at a 20% angle.
I don't know, man.
Well, and that you said moisture got in there. You know, the other thing to keep in mind when stuff like OSB becomes compromised and it begins to swell up, it turns into kind of an organic expansion because it does swell up. It does break those glue bonds and get much thicker.
I'm glad you brought that up because, you know, people talk about OSB all the time. And so, well, you know, you can use OSB on decking for roofs, for instance. Certainly can use it for your outside sheathing and things like that. I wouldn't.
No.
I would not. Absolutely would not. Her flooring is OSB. Those strips on all the trim pieces in the siding, the faux hardy board is, you know, OSB. And you get it wet, let moisture get to it the wrong way and too much of it, and you'll wish you had plywood.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it'll double, triple in size.
Yeah, plywood, and I know people trying to cut costs. Plywood's about $8 more a sheet.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not life changing.
Exactly. Don't compromise on certain things. But so if you've got any questions about maybe you've got a claim, maybe you think you might have a claim for your home, get in touch with Jay. Jay, how do they do that, man? So
yeah, give me a call at 901-484-5645. That's 901-484-5645. or go to our website, bigmroofingandremodeling.com.
Yeah, and Jay makes this process fun, believe it or not.
Absolutely. It's got to be fun.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, we hope we're having fun here on Tool Talk Radio. I guess so. I am. But anyway, we're going to take a quick break. And also, coming up, we're going to have a historically terrible segment.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
You're making a plan while I'm being a man, just winging it.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And we'll come back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com, and our pal Max over there behind the glass, and our buddy Jay Hill with Big M Roofing and Remodeling. Jay, gosh, I'm so glad I don't have your job. I mean, I'm glad you do your job, but man, the emergency phone calls, the bizarre situations that you encounter in your work, doing.
However, Joe, we welcome those situations.
No,
that's what we do.
Some people are wired that way.
Yeah.
Larry Brown's used to that too. The emergency call, the HVAC went out. I like structure. I like to go do projects when I want to do them. So I don't know. That's why we all have our roles, right, Allan?
Yeah, but if your roof's leaking or your AC unit goes down, that's when you're glad that me and Larry like you. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So if you want to get in touch, you can call or text us on the Big M Roofing and Remodeling hotline at 901-683-0989. Well, we always talk about the dynamic personality of Jay Hill, and this is a situation. That's what we're talking about. It's kind of like, I guess it's kind of like soldiers. When there's trouble, their instinct is to run into danger. And Jay, you're not unlike that.
My mother told me, and I actually remember doing this when I was, 4, 5, 6 years old, that I was constantly tearing apart my toys and trying to put them back together.
Now that's interesting. Really?
Yeah. My dad didn't say it quite that way. My mom said that, and I remember doing that, but trying to figure out how it worked and try to put it back together or try to make it look nice or something like that. I just thought about that, but that's so true. And maybe that's why we are what we are and the way we are today is because that's the way we're wired.
Huh. Sounds a little like
just like an EMT would have to certainly have a calling, I think, to that, or a physician or something like that.
I think so. That's interesting. I'm just picturing Jay taking apart the Evel Knievel hand-cranked motorcycle thing. Remember those where they jumped around? Yeah.
As a matter of fact, my dad's quote was this: "Boy, you'd tear up an anvil, and that's made out of steel." If I heard it once, I heard it 1,000 times.
Yeah, if you could dismantle an anvil, hats off to you. So, but all right, well, hey, we haven't done one of these in a while, Jay, and so we want you to join us with this next discussion.
Oh my!
This armor's useless. Why do we even wear it?
Oh, you stink!
This is the worst.
Max just loves his little soundbite, but historically terrible. We didn't tell you what this is, other than if you go to the Tool Talk Radio Facebook page, you'll see what it is. We posted a picture of this, and historically terrible, of course, is where we celebrate past, let's call them missteps of technology, past missteps in our history. But Allan and Jay, you won't remember this, Max, so I'm not really looking at you on this, but you remember those thermoses that you had in your lunchbox that you would drop them and all of a sudden you hear a shattering. They were like, I had one that had Spider-Man and, Thor on it and everything, but they were cool looking. But if you dropped them, they shattered. They were glass-lined thermoses.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that when the school year started, everybody had the new lunchbox with the thermos, but a week later, nobody had a thermos.
Yeah, I mean, one drop, and I mean,
it was
lunchboxes
over.
were all about style. Now, the lunchboxes were cool. They didn't insulate worth the darn. I mean, by lunchtime, you had a lukewarm bologna sandwich or anything. They were all about style.
Well,
they weren't about function.
Sheet metal. I mean, come on. All right. Now keep in mind, these are the predecessors to our modern fascination with the indestructible coffee thing.
Oh, like these
Well, I
cups
mean,
that are 80
look
bucks.
at these
and you can,
look at these thermal high-test steel with all kinds of amazing technology that your coffee will be boiling hot at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or your cooler will keep your ice for the 3 days. And, these were the primitive days of, okay, the kid's got to carry something to school. Give him a metal box and let him drag that around.
Give a child something that if you drop it once, it's going to be filled with shards of broken glass. And maybe they don't know that, and they decide to still take a drink of their Tang, and now we've got a kid
there was
with
another
broken glass in
hot
their mouth.
item from the 60s.
Oh, I love some Tang.
But
I loved
Allan,
it. The astronauts drank it, by gosh.
oh yeah, we drank that.
And
But
then you tried that freeze-dried ice cream and decided you were never going to be an astronaut.
But what happened? When I think of the liability alone, if you're the manufacturer of these things, I think of that Saturday Night Live skit with Dan Aykroyd when he's the sleazy toy maker. That it's like, here's the plastic bag, you put it over the kid's face. And
We talked about this briefly last night, but you're talking about a time where you didn't even have to wear a seatbelt. It was just a lap belt at that if you thought that you wanted to.
Oh, you throw the kids in the back.
Anything goes.
Throw the kids in the back of the pickup truck and let them, But Allan, what was the deal with this? Somebody thought it was a good idea, and these were around for enough time where we all probably in our generation had one of these. So.
All right, I'm going to mark it down to it was the best thing we had thought of at that time.
Okay.
So, all right, you got to go back. It's not so much the schools, but go even further back and think about the steel workers building New York.
Well, they all had thermoses, right?
Exactly. And here's what happened. The steel workers went up.
Mm-hmm.
They got there in the morning, they clocked in, and you took your thermos and your bucket and your lunch. Everything went up with you.
Right.
Because you didn't come back down until the end of the shift.
Yeah.
Because you might be 30, 40, 50, 100 stories up. So, I understand the metal box. Because it took some banging around, and you really weren't worried about, we weren't worried about food safety too much back in those
hold up.
days.
You drop a lunchbox, big deal. But
that thermos, and then, the technology, we came up with different ideas. We lined it with different things. And, we kind of wound up with the cheap thermos that we wound up in the schools, 50s, 60s, 70s, going into the 80s, I guess. I was too old by then.
But why did it work? Because it basically, when I did a little research on this, it's the plastic on the outside.
Right.
Then there's glass on the inside, and then there's a vacuum in between there. And why does that keep our stuff hot or cold?
There was mirrored glass.
Okay. Why does that matter?
We know for a fact that a reflective barrier actually has some effect.
I didn't know that. Did you know that, Jay?
A reflective. Well, this is why it was a big thing back in the 80s when people were putting reflective barriers up in their attic. There was big sheets of look like aluminum foil.
Okay.
And if you've seen a high-tech, we can survive anything sleeping bag, it looks like aluminum foil.
Right.
Because it's designed to reflect the infrared heat back in on you. So that's the theory. That's why you had the mirrored-looking glass. And the airspace is actually a time-honored way of insulating something. So if you look at the insulation in your walls, you've got, usually today it's fiberglass, but one of the big things about the fiberglass is it has air trapped inside of it with a substrate to hold it in place. So now your wall is insulated against the outside world.
It's interesting to me that air can be an insulator. Like, is that why we have double pane glass?
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and I'll tell you, because we do a lot of windows, obviously, and the fact that they're double pane now and they're filled with argon gas, it's an insulator beyond, beyond comprehension on my level. We used to just have single pane glass, but now with the double pane and the gas in the middle, it literally diffuses the ultraviolet rays into the home and knocks that heat. It can't get in.
It's interesting that air can be an insulator to me. I don't know why, but was the problem with these thermoses that the glass wasn't tempered or something? Like, what if they just had stronger glass? Would they have worked? Or
well, keep in mind they were trying to make a product at a price point.
yeah, I know these were
And
like
they
$3
were
or
not
something.
gonna,
so-
those. I hate to say it, but it was just a product designed to sell for 99 cents. So
Yeah.
you could only get so much tech and so much quality into 99 cents.
How many kids drank broken glass though? Like, at what point
I-
does the lawsuits offsets?
I just know as technology and prices continued, products get replaced.
Yeah.
So as soon as something better came along, a different kind of thermos, and especially when coffee started growing, because keep in mind, you got to go back to the 70s to get the coffee mania started.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that grown people were back to carrying around something wanting to be hot or cold.
Yeah.
Those big Aladdin or Stanley, like that big green one.
Yeah.
What insulates it?
Well, we'll talk about that when we come back.
Okay, there we go. Boy, we triggered Jay with this. Well, everybody's got one of these, so we'd like to know how they work. All right, but hour 1 of Tool Talk Radio is in the can, but stay tuned, folks. We have a lot coming up here in hour 2 of Tool Talk Radio.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com, our pal Max over there behind the glass, and in the house, the man that keeps our phone lines operating, Jay Hill with Big M Roofing and Remodeling. So it's a perfect day to call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling hotline at 901-683-0989, especially if you've got any damage to your home, the exterior of your home, that maybe you're not sure what to do about it. Maybe it's covered by your homeowner's insurance, Jay. That's not
maybe.
an easy process to navigate. And also, maybe you're considering a remodeling project for the inside of your home. You guys kind of do from top to bottom, Jay. So
Yeah, absolutely we do. We try to do everything, as you just said, Joe, exteriorly, but we also come inside the home, too, to do some drywall and painting and so on. We're just not your, as I like to say, we're not your bathroom and we're not your kitchen, folks.
yeah, that's a specialty. There's
It
a
is.
lot involved with the kitchen and bathroom.
Yeah, it's a long,
remodel.
drawn-out process. That's what it is.
Yeah. So, but before the break, we were talking. I guess you never know what you're going to get mileage out of. But we were talking in our historically terrible segment about something we grew up with. Max, you're younger, so they had improved thermos technology by the time you were around.
I heard about it in passing, but I never experienced it firsthand.
Yeah, we were talking about these little horrible thermoses we had when we were kids that if they were glass lined, and if you dropped them, they basically shattered and they were useless. And I'm not going to pretend that some kids didn't purposely make another kid drop theirs or throw something or whatever, But Allan, to me, the liability of broken glass in a kid's drinking, vessel sounds really terrible. But Jay had asked something, and I feel like we should wrap up you had a question, Jay, I think, about the why are they working so well now? What did we do?
Yeah. As a friend of mine said, I'd love to know this one too, Allan.
All righty.
So you put something in there hot, it stays hot.
It stays
if you
hot.
something cold, it stays cold.
All
How
right.
does it know?
Welcome to molecular science.
Here we go.
Here we
Wow,
go. Buckle up.
man.
All right.
I just want to say, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you, Allan. I've noticed something. Max, how long? Okay, we're going on 3 years over. We've got about 6 years of Tool Talk Radio. I don't think I've ever once said, Allan, so how does something work? And you said, I don't know. Have you ever heard that?
I've never heard it.
Never.
No.
All right, go ahead. It's just an observation.
He's well informed.
We've got a long. Well, Allan's like an encyclopedia. I mean, he remembers stuff. And
He does.
He's got a brain for this. But it's just an observation. I'm like, you never say I don't know.
I've got a lot of friends that pay me a lot of money from trivia nights out at
I bet they do.
I
I bet they do.
But anyway, go ahead.
All right. So how does the modern thermos work? Well, the modern thermos actually takes a huge advantage of absolutely nothing. And
Like
that
the
is a
void in
big,
space?
important, say that again?
Like the void in space.
Exactly. All right. So how does heat and cold work? By the exciting or the diminishing of the movement of atoms.
So they're moving fast, it gets hot.
If you get them excited, they are bouncing around all happy and they're spreading energy and thus heat radiates. If you want something cold, well, that is the absence of heat. So the best way in the world to actually insulate something is to make sure there are no atoms there to get excited.
Oh, you remove kind of like the Hadron Collider. Like they just take everything out.
That.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right.
Next to the springly sprocket.
All right. So, whatever you want to call it, the actual modern flask that we're using these days that is so hot, whether the brand or not, is actually a vacuum flask. It is actually two thermoses. You've got the one that contacts your food, and you have the one on the outside that you hold. Between them is literally nothing. It has been as vacuumed out as they can get it.
So if you were to poke a little hole in there, you've ruined it. Oh,
You've ruined it. Because the
or
minute
if
you let air in it, right, you let air in it, and now it's just going to operate as good as it can as two pieces of metal with air insulation.
That's actually extremely interesting.
It is.
I'm surprised.
So everybody goes, well, what did they do? And I go, well, they did absolutely nothing, because there's as close to nothing in between the two layers as possible. It's similar to like putting argon in a windshield in the window, because argon is a less excitable gas than a standard air mix.
So even if you got the sun beating on it, it's neutralizing.
Well, argon is very heavy.
Okay.
If you were to take a cup of argon and put it up above your face and breathe, you could almost literally drown in argon trying to get it out of your lungs because it's heavy. Argon wants to sit and be left alone, which is why it makes it a good insulator for your window.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if somebody breaks the window, the argon gas flows out the bottom of the window and eventually mixes into the air, not causing any problems. But if you were to take a cup of argon like a helium balloon, all right, you fill up a balloon full of helium, it floats up because helium is lighter than air. You fill up a balloon with argon, you let go, that baby is hitting the floor.
Interesting.
It's going straight down.
Really?
Because of the density of the gases. So that is why an argon window works so much better than an air-cooled or a single pane. With your modern vacuum flask, having as close to nothing between those two walls, which is why it's so important that they're made out of good steel.
I was going to say, because to me, the whole point
in the lunchbox thermos was not a quality product.
Again, designed to sell for 99 cents.
Yeah.
So,
interesting.
But I got to give the old thermos of old, as amazingly bad as it was, it more or less was, the predecessor to the amazing thermoses that we have now.
So the concept was sound. They just used cheap materials.
Well, they didn't really have the technology to make a vacuum like that. They didn't really have, But as we've learned, and now we have collector series thermoses, then so long as they remain airtight, they will work perfectly.
That's good. You know what we ought to do? We ought to talk as a topic one show about, like, tell me something from the 60s or 70s that's better today. I mean, that would be fun to compare, contrast, whether it be automobiles, whether it be some type of building product. Obviously, there's things that are better, but there's some things that are worse.
Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's true. It's, that's how we came up with a historically terrible. It seems like we've got quite a bit from the 1960s and 70s. So, but,
every time we get a new technology, we have a tendency to run like a 4-year-old down the hall with it.
Yeah.
Like it's a brand new pair of scissors. And we do great things with it, and then we discover, 20 years later, it really does something bad.
Yeah.
Aluminum wiring was perfect on paper.
Yeah.
But we didn't realize that those little electrical, the little electrons were actually going to pit the aluminum and make it catch on fire.
Yeah.
I'll tell
We
you a
didn't
good.
know.
Yeah, I'll tell you a good one real quick. I've got just a second. Back in my automotive days, back in 85, 86, we started seeing all these front wheel drive cars coming to light. It was mid 80s anyway. You shake it. At that time, I'd only been in the automobile business a few years. Had this old pro buddy of mine named Jeff. We were standing out in front of the dealership, and some car came by, and I knew it was front wheel drive. And I looked at him. I said, Jeff, let me ask you a question. Why do you think that all these cars have gone to front wheel drive? And he said, only thing that makes sense to me is because it's cheaper, because if it was better, the Germans would be doing it.
Oh, really? Okay.
And
so
that ended up actually being a fact, and they sell you on the idea of better traction in the front, but trust me, it's cheaper.
is that what it was? Well,
Yeah, that's what it
because you're
was.
not running a big axle down the back. And okay, that is interesting. So,
Well,
Show me the German front-wheel drive cars.
Yeah, well, you could start. It's like asking who in Memphis makes the best barbecue.
Yeah,
You can start
I
a
don't
fist
even-
fight over that one.
Yeah.
However, different technologies have different applications.
yeah. Although, let's face it, though, the Japanese make the best cars. I'm sorry. They hand it.
Well,
Toyota. Let's just say it.
No,
Yeah.
I'll say this.
Here
Japanese.
goes the fist fight.
The Japanese,
No, they make quality automobiles,
Japanese make the best quality automobiles and that are serviceable, affordable. That's the Germans make a heck of a car. You're going to pay a ton for it, and it's going to cost you a ton to service it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're right.
Okay. Well, gosh, you never know where the conversation. We go from thermoses to
Well, they're
automobiles and
using
everything.
a similar technology. The vacuum technology has shown up in the darndest places. And, when you start thinking about the ability to suck all of the atoms out of something, a thermos bottle is just not the first thing you think of.
No.
You think of something like the Hadron Collider or something where you can't have atoms in the way. You got to have all this great suction. Well, congratulations. We're using that technology in Windows. We're using that technology to make a thermos bottle. These technologies are in manufacturing everywhere.
So they put the thermos together. Now they got to get the air out.
Yes.
That's how they'd have to do it, I would suppose. I wonder how they do that.
That is just that last little step.
Yeah.
It's a little needle and a
We'll
quick
never know the
little
answer to
seal
that
over.
one, I don't think.
Oh, no, it's really easy. It's cool videos on YouTube.
Okay.
It really is.
And that's and that also plays a role in like canning and stuff like that.
Exactly.
That you guys do. So it's just
That is canning. Now canning, see, that makes sense to me. The thermos bottle, the correlation between that and canning. Yeah, I get it.
Okay. I don't know, man. But I
Sucking
just
air
keep
out.
thinking about like when this would expand, where else we could use this type of technology in the home besides just windows. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's asking a lot that you could put it in walls and things like that because somebody's gonna drive a nail through it or something. But
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's.
I don't know. Vacuum insulations. I think there's a role for it somewhere else.
It's out there.
Okay. Pretty interesting stuff, Alan, I have to admit. I don't know how you know all this or maybe he's just making it all up, Jay.
I think he needs a talk show. I think he needs his own talk show. I really
Okay.
do.
Well, this is going to be good. In our great moments in building history, this is right in Alan's wheelhouse. We're going to talk all about one of the most famous parks in the world, Central Park in New York.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
I've been going door to door looking for fire hazards. Mind if I give your place a little inspection?
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Oh, yeah, I'd be happy to let that guy in my home and look around. Sounds great. And we'll come back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com. Our pal Max over there behind the glass. And in the house, our good buddy Jay Hill with Big M Roofing and Remodeling. So what better day to utilize the Big M Roofing and Remodeling hotline at 901-683-0989. You can call or text us and even send pictures. Tasteful pictures, not like the kind our buddy Deuce sends that'll ruin your breakfast. And there's no, my eyes are still burning from those pictures, Alan, a couple weeks ago. But anyway, we'd love to hear from you anytime today, especially if you have questions about the exterior protection of your home. But I've been looking forward to this conversation, Max. Let's hit it, man.
And now, great moments in building history.
Well, Alan, we've talked, we've mentioned this place many times, but it occurred to me we've never actually we've never focused on this in our great moments in building history. But today we're going to talk about Central Park in New York. And if you're like me, well, I'll be honest, I've never been there. I've stopped at New York once at the airport. That's the extent of it. But anyway, I've never been to Central Park. I know they get 42 million visitors a year, so I have to believe many people here in the Mid-South have at least spent some time there. But until I started doing some research, I had no idea the scale of this project. But you might say, well, it sounds like a lot of landscaping. It's everything. It's every kind of construction.
Yes.
This entire thing is man-made, even down to the lakes, and you mentioned it before. It was like swamps, but just the salient points is what I was amazed by, Allan, is this is the mid 1800s we're talking about, and I know that the grid system for New York was created in 1811, which if you look at the map of New York, these streets are basically north, south, east, west, straight as an arrow. But they also allowed room for parks. What I was amazed by, Allan, is this is back in the age of let's make as many buildings as we can. We don't care about pollution. Let's have factories. Let's have as much industry as we can. But yet the leaders saw the importance of having some space too. Like let's have some actual greenery here. And so in 1853, they had a contest to have different proposals. And they had 33 ideas for how to use the park. And the winners were Frederick Law Olmsted, who was also heavily involved in the Chicago World's Fair, and Calvert Vaux. And I believe Frederick Law Olmsted is related to our buddy Brandon Olmsted. I think he told me that. But anyway, they had a great idea for Central Park. And what amazed me was just how much thought and that they actually followed through with this. This was a very successful project. So, I mean...
Well, all right. One is you really had to have vision. And how many people are moving in that in 1811 you actually sat down and designed the grid of your city?
Yeah. 1811, our country was still pretty new.
I mean, we're still pretty green, pretty fresh. And let's face it, New York doesn't look anything like New York looks today.
Right. Yeah.
But the foresight of these people is staggering.
Yep.
I mean, it really does sit down, and they designed a grid system that is pretty much 100% intact today.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting. There's a lot of history. I mean, some of these buildings are ancient. But
so then we get to Central Park, and Central Park was never actually thought of in the original grid the way we think of it today. But it was kind of like Louisiana Purchase. It was like a perfect storm. Suddenly, pretty much all of this and basically it was squatter territory because it was swampy, rocky, not conducive to any real form of agriculture, anything really going on. So they were kind of in a way able to buy all of this land from the various sundered owners.
Well, we should say there's like every thing we study here. There's a dark history too. There's some bad.
I see some right here.
Yeah, there was some eminent domain going on. There was
exactly.
There was some. In fact, one of the communities, they were actually a stop on the Underground Railroad, helping rescue slaves and things like that. And they were eminent domained out of there. But it's one of those things that's just part of our history. I guess.
Seneca Village.
Yeah, Seneca Village was a very famous place, but like you said, Allan, it was basically swampy areas. I mean, most of it was not inhabited. So
it was, it was just that part of you have to think about utilization of when you start building a city or your home or you start looking at any of this. You look at highest and best use.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's not much infrastructure around you, you're just kind of out there and you got flat land, the highest and best economic use may be lumber. It might be crops. It might be this. It might be that. Now, at this time, over in England, keep in mind a lot of people have little backyards and raise their own chickens and ducks and stuff like that. Well, New York was really, at this point, because of the number of people moving in, looking at, we really have a lot of growth to do.
Yeah.
So they just were kind of surrounding this area anyway. So that's where people like Mr. Olmsted and that kind of stuff, because he was actually a farmer from Connecticut, if I remember correctly.
He was a writer and a farmer, and he
there you
fell
go.
into
And he's kind of
landscape.
like, all right, well, what can we do with this?
Right.
Well, we could kind of flatten this area out a little bit. We could, dig this down a little bit over here and make the water a lake instead of a swamp. And he just, they started coming up with this. And then they had the big design competition. And at that point, it kind of went, we could actually have a plan for this too. So in 1858, they got started. And keep in mind, this is 1858. We don't have gas-powered equipment yet.
Oh, no. They had like 10,000 people working on
And
this,
they rolled in there, and they moved over 5 million,
Mm-hmm.
with an M, 5 million cubic yards of stone, earth, topsoil, trees, debris, whatever was in the way of this idea. That is an amazing amount of work.
Well, it said here, I'm looking at, they planted 500,000 trees, shrubs, and vines. Okay, that's no small feat. They the one thing you should mention too, Allan, is the fact that this back in the day, if you take yourself back in history, parks, especially if you go to Europe and France and that, they were for the rich.
Yes,
and they had these intricate gardens, and they were they weren't for the poor, the middle class.
Right.
The one thing that Frederick Olmsted said is he wants this to be a democratic space. In other words,
Yes.
it's for everybody, and it's for all the huddled masses that are coming into New York, which I thought was very cool. The other thing that it's subtle. I never even noticed this when I've seen pictures of Central Park. They had to have, if you've seen it, folks, I'm sure you've seen that it's basically a giant rectangle. Well, at some point, you got to be able to get some traffic through there, but they didn't want to do it in an obnoxious way. So what they did is they put the road below level, and they basically made the roads where you can cross through Central Park and nobody notices it because
Right.
you're passing over on these walkways and things. And I thought that was a very
The general public can do that?
yeah.
Or
Anybody can just
you just drive under.
you
It's like
drive
a tunnel.
through it. Well, it's not like it's recessed, so it's like 20 feet below the level or whatever, so
It's
you
like
don't
a valley.
notice it. Now, this is, of course, built before they even invented the automobile,
Right.
but it's just the thought that went into that. I really, it's funny because this is a public works program, but they really did it right, man. I have to say, and the spirit of it is very good. I appreciate what they were going for.
Well, and they did a great job. And then, of course, as with anything else, if you don't keep it up,
Yeah.
it starts going down. So by the 20s, the roaring 20s, Central Park was kind of a dump.
Oh,
I
yeah.
wonder what it's like right now with all the issues going on up there.
It's pretty nice now.
They-
Jay, it was a dump in the
No,
60s or something.
Well,
back with
it's
crime.
because it's no longer part of the political landscape. They now have their own conservancy that keeps Central Park up.
Yeah, that's what
Because-
happened. It was like they
Now,
didn't.
Mayor LaGuardia, as part of his first, hey guys, you want to vote for me, was he got really started in and set up a parks commission and got funding, went for federal funding, and started putting in ball fields and playgrounds and stuff like that, and made Central Park more relevant again to stay as a park.
What I was impressed by, because like I said, I've never been there. I didn't realize all of the building. For one thing, it's got 36 bridges,
Right.
Which are that's no small feat. It's got a castle. It's got all sorts of cool museums. It's really neat. There's a lot going on in there. You could spend days exploring Central Park.
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
So there's more to talk about, and we're going to do it when we come back here on Tool Talk Radio.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Pay the price for your lack of vision.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
There it is, Allan. It wouldn't be Tool Talk if Max didn't throw in a Star Wars rejoinder. So, and he's, words of wisdom, you will be penalized if you don't have a vision. So, anyway, welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. Jay Hill was here, but he had to scoot. He's got business to take care of. The guy's always doing something. But if you have any roofing, remodeling needs, make sure you get in touch with Jay. One more time, I'll let you know. You can call or text, you can text him too at 901-484-5645 or go to bigamroofingandremodeling.com. Also, you can get in touch with us on the Big M Roofing and Remodeling hotline, 901-683-0989. We are going to get back shortly to our conversation about great moments in building history, talking about Central Park. But, Max, you said we got a couple of texts, so we always like to acknowledge them, first. So what do we got?
Well, first off, we got our buddy, one of the best nicknames in the world. No, wait, actually, let me start with Norman.
Okay.
Norman said, "Good morning, guys. By the way, I never did send you a picture of the sign hanging above my wood shop door."
Oh, so he sent a picture. Well, what does it say?
It says,
I can't see it.
Rockwell Workshop, fixing everything except stupid.
That's a good policy. It keeps you out of trouble. So, okay. Allan, I can salute that. So, I didn't know Norman was a woodworker. That's interesting. So, okay.
And I guess it's Rockwell because, his name is approximate to Norman Rockwell. Unless his last name is actually Rockwell.
Okay.
Prolix, please text us that.
I heard Norman Rockwell painted 4,000 paintings. Is that right? I don't even know how that's possible.
He was a bit productive, yeah.
The guy's prolific. Well, he painted for like 15 hours a day. But all right, Norman, sounds good. Well, we'll try to get that posted up shortly. Who else chimed in, Max?
We got our buddy Michael Boomerang with an inquiry.
Okay.
What do you think about painting brick? Does it really need to be painted even for protection?
Okay. Well, Allan, go ahead. I have my thought. Obviously, he's talking about the outside of his home, so.
Wow.
And it's a short, we don't have a.
There all right, if it is aesthetically pleasing and a part of the program, go ahead and paint it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know what? You used brick.
Mm-hmm.
If the brick is aesthetically what you want, then it doesn't need paint. I've sandblasted paint off of brick walls before, and I've painted brick walls. It just depends on the aesthetic they're looking for. I don't think it really has all that much to do with the protection of the brick. It's not like wood.
You can. I think what he's asking. I don't know what he's asking, whether you have to or not. I think it's. I think I've seen a lot of painted brick that looks pretty cool, man.
Yeah,
especially these days.
Yeah.
I think it's all, as I would always say, it's all about the prep work. It's all about cleaning. You don't want a layer of dust or crumbling brick between the paint, the primer and that. So it would just be a matter of priming it. Preparing it really well, doing the right primer, and using the right application. I've seen these where, sorry. You know how I feel about paint sprayers and things like that. Yeah. If they just blast it on there without any preparation or something, that's going to be peeling in the years to come. So I don't know. I say go for it. Like I would get the 3/4 inch, maybe even the 1 inch nap roller. I don't know how big your house is, Michael, but just go ahead and use that. It'll work the paint into the brick. It'll never come out, but it's pretty much a permanent commitment. Once you paint it, you're not stripping it ever.
It's like painting the deck. If you've done it once, you'll do it forever.
You have to do it.
Right.
So, but if you do it, send us some pictures. I'd like to know how that goes.
Yeah, I've seen some amazing
I like
brick
it.
paint jobs.
It's a good look, man. Yeah.
But is it really required? Meh.
No.
I'd say it's purely an aesthetic choice.
Yeah.
And by the way, Norman did say his last name is actually Rockwell, but not an artist, at least with paint.
Interesting. Well, how do you what's that like, going through life with a famous name like that?
That's awesome.
It's like, gosh, you're younger than I thought you'd be. All right, in a minute, we're going to get back. Good text, you guys. We appreciate those. Keep them coming in at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling hotline, 901-683-0989. And I'm looking forward to seeing that picture that Norman sent, Max. I'll check that out at the break. But before we get back to our great moments in building history, of course, we want to talk about our good buddy Larry Brown from Brown Refrigeration. Some people may have thought we forgot about that but when Jay's in the house, that's what we're going to talk about the first hour. But your HVAC system, obviously, as we've said, is one of the most important features of your home. It's like it's almost comparable to your car engine, Alan. You could have a great looking car if you don't have an engine functioning properly. What good does it do you? So, but so with that analogy, there is a relationship you have with your HVAC provider, and with that in mind, you want a company that is rock solid, that's reliable, that uses the latest technology, that has a strong business culture and is going to be there for the long term with your HVAC system, and also that really tries to save you money. I mean, the basic principle behind what they do is to try to keep your HVAC system running as efficiently as possible, which means regular tune-ups and regular checkups and cleaning your ductwork and just making sure everything's functioning properly. So you really should have Brown Refrigeration out at least once a year, maybe twice a year, depending on your situation. But the visit costs next to nothing, and it basically pays for itself. But if you need a new system, of course, they use Train systems, which are the latest and cutting-edge technology. They use the Remi Halo system, which is it's really fascinating technology with creating the cleanest air possible that's actually cleaning every surface that it hits. We just love the business culture at Brown Refrigeration. As I said, it is a rock-solid company, and that's what you want with your HVAC provider. And they're friendly, and they answer their phone. So get in touch with Brown Refrigeration. You can call them directly at 901-362-1881 or go to their website, brownref.com. Well, before the break, we were talking about our great moments in building history, the Central Park in New York. And, of course, we've all seen it, but if you're like me and maybe you've never been there or maybe you're not as familiar, it's a pretty cool rabbit hole to go down on YouTube. There's all sorts of videos, and some are better than others. But, Alan, what strikes me is that this was a government project that was very well executed, you have to say. But what's interesting here is that I would think if you're a mayor or, you're a politician, you want something that's going to be a big splashy project that's going to get people excited and everything. But the truth is this park was designed for the next generation. So when you planted something, you're looking at, some people even said when they went into Central Park as it was being, put together, they're like, okay, it looks kind of empty here. Well, that's because this tree that's 5 feet tall in 40 years is going to be 50 feet tall or whatever. So but that's an interesting concept to have that much foresight. How many times have we talked about don't plant that oak tree 10 feet from your house?
Exactly.
So, but that's an interesting idea because, having that much knowledge of landscape and plants and the future and everything.
To tie this directly to going out and playing in the backyard right now, of the one thing Central Park really, really got right, and I'm going to pick on Central Park for the last 37 years because they were picked up by the Central Park Conservancy, and that's in partnership with the city.
Yeah.
So the park's 843 acres is now under kind of a private guidance. So it's a little more immune to the slings and arrows of who's in office, who's doing what to who's campaigning. And I want to give them a little shout out because when they took over, again, Central Park had gotten a little threadbare.
Oh, back in the day, back in the 60s, they said it turned into a dump.
It was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
It was a great place to go jogging and get mugged. It was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And they go rolling back in with the same inspiration they had back in 1850 and said, all right, see this big empty dead spot? This is going to be the Great Lawn.
Right.
Here we go. So we're going to pick a grass that can handle the traffic. We're going to install. And the one thing that they did was Central Park is very relaxed.
It's huge. Yeah, it looks
out.
Like it. Yeah,
it
they give you room to breathe.
Out.
Yeah.
They relaxed it. And I'm going to take the lessons of Central Park and tie them directly to your home as everybody is now looking towards the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Because I got news for you, Joe. Me and my bulb auger have been very busy for weeks now getting ready for fall planting and moving and rearranging and a lot of landscaping.
Right.
And Central Park, when you go look at these pictures, you want great ideas to steal? Look at where they planted the trees. They didn't plant them 10 feet apart. They planted them 40 feet apart.
Right.
They put them 20 feet out from the building. All of the bridges are clean and clear and well-defined. So everything was given a lot of space. And to prove that they're successful, I think the last count in the last couple of years was over 40 million people a year visit Central Park.
42 million. And I'm sorry, I don't think we even mentioned this. This is 843 acres.
Yeah.
Put your head around that. That's huge.
This place is the size of small cities.
In the middle of, there's places in Central Park you can go where you almost forget you're in a city. Like it's that enclosed and it's that. But I was amazed with all the structures in there.
Including the amount of birds, bugs, critters, and the occasional coyote that shows up in Central Park. So just to show you that Central Park is responsible for peregrine falcons.
Yeah.
I mean, who knew falcons would love the big city? They moved in.
And it's interesting because the we were saying it, the grid for New York was laid out in 1811, and in the original plan, the grid showed that they were going to allow space for parks spread out throughout the community. But I don't know, this is a lot. So would you rather have a park that's 2 acres or just, would you rather have 50 parks or 100 parks that are 2 acres, or would you rather have this massive, almost like, own its own environment? But I do think there's something to be said because it fell into disrepair in the 60s, but today, by all accounts, it's really nice. I mean, and I know I'm very familiar with Chicago. There were places, Allan, I grew up as a kid in Chicago, and like you wouldn't even go near that place. Right. It was just too. Now you got it's beautiful. They have mothers pushing their kids with baby strollers, and it's like, so there's a lot of renewal that happens. It's not all bad doom and gloom out there. There's a lot of good.
The Conservancy's doing a great job with this.
So hats off, and it's a great area of study, Central Park in New York. This is Tool Talk Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
The world is a question. This room is an answer. Answer is no.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Gosh, talk about dropping the mic. Okay. And we'll come back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning. Here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. There's just enough time for a quick call or text at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling hotline at 901-683-0989. We also invite you to go to the Tool Talk Radio Facebook page and check out the posts we've made over there. Max, you said we got another text. Who is it this time?
This time we got our buddy Danny. He usually texts at the most inconvenient times, like at the end of the show.
Right.
This time he actually listened to us.
Okay. What did Danny have to say?
He said, electrician by trade, carpenter/painter by need. I tell my customers I've got to slow down now. I'm not 70 anymore. I'm 75. Love your show, Danny.
All right. Well, I like that attitude. So, okay.
Just keep rocking, Danny. Keep rocking, man.
There's an old Chinese proverb, I believe. It's don't worry about slowing down, worry about standing still.
I agree, man. I think being retired would be to me, Allan, could you
not going to
imagine that? No.
Not going to happen.
Now, maybe you could be more selective in the work you take, but could you just imagine getting up and having nothing to do and sit there? I'd be bored. That would be torture for me. So, but all right, well, Danny, we appreciate it, and I like the spirit. So I guess we'll see how long Danny keeps going with that.
Man, keep rolling.
But he's right. Sometimes you do things by necessity. It's just like, well, I can't get that electrical thing in until I do the carpentry work to get ahead of it. So, but anyway, all right. Well, hey, let's shift gears, Allan, which is We're going to get to our must-have item of the week, which doesn't do us a lot of good. Unless you're looking at our Facebook page, we did post a picture. This looks like a medieval torture device or a weapon that would have been on the end of a spear for somebody. But tell people what I'm holding up.
It is exactly what you just described. That is...
really? Torture device?
That is that is a bulb auger. And that one is designed to actually get used on your drill.
This says SP5 on the tip. I'm sure that stands for something.
Yep, well, that is a number 5 standard bulb auger. So it's a 2-inch hole. It's a 2-inch drill, but it makes it as a 3-inch hole. And I cannot tell you the amount of work that particular device has saved me over the last 20 years.
Well, I feel like most people probably have seen these post hole diggers. That it's usually two guys. It's a gas-driven engine, and then there's this huge auger on the end of it. This is just a smaller, more civilized version of that. And
that is correct.
So you're out drilling. I mean, you're out planting, and you're like, okay, I got 50 bulbs I want to stick in the ground. Why am I going to use my little shovel? Why not?
I use that for so much more than just planting stuff.
Okay.
Usually when pouring concrete and I need a small footer.
This will go through concrete?
Well, this will make that footer real easy for you. So if you're laying out and you need a couple of footer spots where you can tap in some rebar, that instantly puts in a footer. If you are trying to do a trim around something and you need to loosen the soil or the topsoil, that makes an excellent device to crack through that top layer. Also, hey, for planting, if you're doing a lot of yard work, you're getting your fall in, that will change your life when it comes to getting stuff in the ground.
It's funny because sometimes, we talk about digging. Digging can be a very satisfying thing. You stick the shovel in, the dirt is ready to go, or it could be something you want to throw it through a window. It's just so frustrating. Yeah. So anything you can do to help make your digging easier. But I got a question about this, Allan, because we've seen the dark side of this. We've seen those post hole digger videos where literally it snags something and it throws the guys holding. Right. I mean, there's a lot of torque, and and then the post hole thing just keeps spinning until it runs out of gas or something. Well, what happens with this if you snag something?
All right. Well, here's the secret.
Like, does it jerk your wrist or something? You probably got to grip it right.
Well, but here's the secret. Don't put it on drill.
Wait, what?
When you've got your drill has got a graduated spot where when it reaches the end of where you want the screw to go in, it then just goes tick, 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 till you take your finger off the trigger.
Okay.
So take this, put it on the drill setting, and then back it down 2 notches so that if you hit that tree root and this thing stops, it'll just go and not grab your wrist and sling you to the ground.
Okay, so maybe that's the problem. We're just using, you always want to go full power. So maybe
now have I ever flung myself, if I ever ripped my arm around, that before I figured out, take the drill off of maximum speed, put it on the torque setting, and back it down 2 from the drill setting, and that is one of the greatest tools ever. It's really easy to find tree roots with that thing. And again, the biggest thing, the most I've ever used it for was putting in a brick trim.
Yeah.
Going down the side of a driveway, they wanted to put a slanted brick trim. The brick's laid over 45 degrees and wanted to make a cool little pathway line. And so instead of sitting there for ever and ever and ever, I gave my assistant the big drill, the big battery, and the auger, and had them just run, just tap it a couple of inches deep all the way up that path. And then I came behind it with the shovel designed to trench.
Right.
And if you've ever seen a trenching shovel, it looks like a factory reject.
What do you mean?
It's only a couple.
So narrow. Yeah.
It's only a couple inches. It's 3 inches, 4 inches wide, and it's bent.
Right.
Yeah, it kind of comes out, has a funny angle. But the minute you get the hang of how to use these 2 tools together, you will become the landscaping monster you've always wanted to be.
Well, it's great. It's great. It's just use it carefully. And just remember, this thing's got a lot of torque to it.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why I say back it off of the drill setting a couple of notches, and now you will save your wrist. And as I've pointed out to a lot of people that are not big outside workers, and that is just because you don't have the right tools.
Yeah,
You
a
got
lot
the
of times you
proper
just make your
tools.
life harder.
Oh my gosh! Well, it's like when I introduced you to the wonderful world of reciprocating saws.
Yeah,
You went crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Although they're not all created equal either. I bought.
No,
I
they're
learned
not.
that I told
You
you,
can burn
we,
them out.
We bought the turbo one. Now we've
Oh,
got
yeah.
the heavy duty, and
You got
you
the
got to
big
use
baby.
the right blades too.
Yes, you do.
So
So, great tool.
Okay, very cool. Hey, Allan, this is well. Before we get to this next thing, let's not neglect to talk about our own projects and things like that. So, what's going on this week with darkoakmedia.com?
The big thing at darkoakmedia.com has been, well, us, to be
Okay.
perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Tool Talk Radio is, we're available as a podcast on YouTube, so we are internationally available. And I got to tell you, it is so much fun to look at where we're being listened to.
Okay, like where?
Well, the latest ones, of course, we have our favorites. Canada is a big spot for us. Australia, New Zealand. But I love it when places like Finland, Japan,
Yeah.
this places you don't really expect. Every so often we get a South African.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a lot of fun.
But we want to hear from you. We want to see
please
pictures.
send us a text.
Yeah.
Please send us a text and a picture. Let us know what your Tool Talk issues are, where you're from around the world.
Okay, sounds good. So, hey, Allan, I mentioned this at the top of the show, and I don't know if this is war stories or something, but I talked about Frankensteining tools. Nobody really took us up on that. Maybe we'll.
I prefer the term homunculus.
Homunculus, but what is it about that, Allan? Is it just because we're cheapskates or something? But I mean, there's tools where I've rigged them.
No, I had a favorite lawnmower for years.
Yeah.
That was just everybody that ever saw it looked at it and went, you just named it Franken, didn't you? Because
it's got the duct tape over here.
Oh
it's got
my
the
God,
clamp
this
over
poor
here.
thing was now it was safe. Keep in mind, I made sure that blade was safe.
Okay.
But the little cover over the muffler was janky. This was tapped, that was covered. There were little plates and patches all over it. The poor thing was just mangled, but it ran so good.
Well, it's a worthy topic, and we're going to carry it over to next week because it's we've all got some of those, but not today, Allan. It's time to get out of here. The show's over. So on behalf of my buddy Allan Gilbreth and our pal Max over there behind the glass and the visiting Jay Hill, I'm Joe Thorderson. Thanks for listening to Tool Talk Radio, and we'll see you next week.